I'm Wessel Verrijt, and I'm a visual artist. And I graduated in 2018 at the Art Academy in Den Bosch. And I make sculptures and performances. And in my practice, I like to combine those two by using my sculptures as costumes or as catalysts or as props. So this picture is a performance I did in Amsterdam last year, where my sculptures were in the space and they were like driving or moving through the space by performers. And I like to see I'm gonna lower the volume a little bit. And I would like to see my work as an organism, so as a big amalgam whole where materials are, I use materials that I found in the environment. All sorts of materials that I collect at the place where I work. And that is also the reason that I always like to do residencies, because then you temporarily work at a specific place, at a specific context. So then, I go into the environment to collect materials. And in the performances, I like to combine actually the skin of the performer, so the more soft skin of a human body, with this materials in my work, which is, they have a lot of things that are different, but one thing that I really like about the skin of my materials is that you always see a lot of traces of the past. So for example, this cardboard box has a lot of traces of the function it had before. And I really like to use that as inspiration, but also to use it for new purposes inside my own autonomous world. And these are some pictures of like the combination of the skin of the human body and the skin of the sculpture. I like to see them as hybrid entities, partly human, partly matter or materialistic. This is a picture of an exhibition I did last year, or this year. The exhibition was called Wasteland in Den Haag. And the curator combined or brought together a lot of artists who work with waste material or material that they collect in their environment. And I showed a film which I made during a residency. And I like to do residencies because I really believe in the value of adapting to another context, and in that idea also creating new questions or new perspectives on your own work. So I live in the Netherlands and I work in the Netherlands, so my concepts and my ideas and my perspective is really much created because of the environment, because of the culture, or because of the ideas, how we approach art, or how I approach art and how I approach my environment, especially when you use, and I use materials that are found on construction areas or in containers or on the streets. And I like to make that movement back to the public space to create social interventions. So this was at an abandoned place in Eindhoven during a residency. And I really liked this place because it was completely abandoned. So there was like a dome on the technical university area, which they used for practice in the past, but they just kept it, so it was completely falling apart. And one artist that I found very interesting is a French artist. It's actually like an outsider artist, and he's called Ferdinand Cheval. And he was a postman in the 50s, and he was collecting a lot of stones during his work. I also have been postman during my art academy time, and then at the end of the days my bags were empty, but his bags were completely full with stones. And over a time lapse of 30 years, he built this Palais Ideal. It's a palace, and I really like this because this is a super big, enormous thing, but it exists, or it's built out of like all kind of little pieces that all brought to that same space, like a big, it's like a flow of material. And I think that I also like to see the environment as an ecosystem where everything is in constant movement and constantly, everything is in like, let's see, I can tell it the best way through this. The residency I did in Bulgaria last year, and it was actually the first residency in abroad, and I really like to, like I said, to question my own ideas and my own perspective by going to another environment. And in my work I use a lot of cardboards, and I collect the cardboards. Mostly in the Netherlands you can just go on, in my neighborhood of my studio it's a Tuesday, and then everyone puts all the cardboard on the street because we don't see another purpose or another value in it after we get our package from. But in Bulgaria I was also going to like a little shop. It was in a little village, there was only one shop. And besides me there was also a woman collecting cardboard, a beautiful old woman, she was like 90 something. So I asked the curator, like, okay, what is she gonna do with the cardboard? She was making little pieces of it and put it all in a box. And the curator told me that a lot of houses in that village don't have a central heating, so people collect the whole year through cardboard to warm their house during the quite heavy winter in Bulgaria. So then I also realized, like, okay, I use cardboard in the Netherlands because there is a lot of cardboard that we don't use anymore, or we just throw it away. But then doing a residency in Bulgaria was also the realization that that in Bulgaria I might look for other materials to use than cardboard. This was also in Bulgaria, and I did some interventions in the public space by making films and doing performances on the street. And this was Dragomir. He was a neighbor, but he was always very drunk. So at the shop where I tried to collect the cardboard, he was always sitting, drinking like this cans of beer. But he was always walking the same routes. And this was last September in Spain. It's in the south of Spain in Blanca, near to Morocco. And I did a residency for 2 months. This was my view from my apartment. I did the residency in Bulgaria, and I really like this idea of changing my environment, especially when your environment is a very important part of your work as source of material, but also as decor for performances. So I went to Spain, and with an open perspective, because in Bulgaria I had a lot of ideas what I wanted to do, and there was also a solo exhibition, so there was a lot of pressure and also time pressure. So in Spain I took like 2 months instead of 1 month, and tried to give me some time, but the first weeks were like 40 degrees, So it was very warm, but it actually was very good because normally I start immediately with, you have your own structures, your own habits of how you want to work. Mine is first collect a lot of stuff and then have a studio full of stuff and then start making drawings and start making sculptures. But yeah, it was good to do it differently because now I had to walk like 500 meters up a hill. So it was quite heavy to even go to the supermarket was like a day, quite a heavy exercise. And what I really liked about Spain were the walls. Like in the Netherlands, we like to make everything completely, like everything is perfect. So if we have a wall where plaster is falling off, we will think about a wall that will stay the same for 100 years. That's just how the pragmatic view on our environment. And in Spain, they're just okay with the fact that the new plaster layer is coming off after a couple of years. So every wall is like a Rothko painting with a lot of layers and a lot of cracks. So I saw also the thing in common with my own work where I like to use those traces, also like this, but also all the cracks. So every centimeter had a lot of details. And this was after a heavy rain. There were, maybe you saw pictures of places in south of Europe, and then the Sahara sand is coming like with the wind, so everything is orange. So these are like traces of a heavy rainfall where the Sahara sand came from the roof. So instead of working very hard because of the heat, I start making collages and using the walls I've seen as inspiration for new works. And it was also nice, the reason I wanted to go to Bulgaria and also to Spain is because they treat their environment differently. So there is a lot of stuff that you can find and that you can use. So I used this thing. The only thing is that everything smells like cats. There are a lot of cats. So you can also smell it. With the sun on it the whole day, it's quite... So that makes it, yeah. And this was my studio in Spain. The residency is called DEC. And it's created by Berlin artists, and they went to that place. Do you know the place? Oh, no. Oh, okay. So yeah, I use the walls. I tried to create my own plaster wall and to try to create my own traces. And then I created a performance, and I also met other residents. So I want to do a step back because I was asked to tell about residencies. So mainly I now want to tell about my experiences as resident, and I think one of the things I really like is the fact that you met a lot of other residents, and in this case there were many residents from Argentina and Colombia, and I met one resident, and she is a sound artist, but she was sitting here, so we used the same space, and she was actually making the same movement by using the environment to record sounds from the village, and use all those sounds to make soundscapes. So we start to work together because I use materials and she used sounds, so both of our work were really connected to the environment. So we created a performance piece, first this film, and then afterwards during the opening or during the exhibition, a performance. And we actually use my sculptures as instruments or as a catalyst for sounds. So I added a lot of elements that make sound, and she used that in her soundscape. And we also used contact microphones to really use the object as an instrument. And I actually want to show a longer version of the film. So yeah, that's actually my presentation.